For some background information, I'm a female about to start my final year of secondary school, after which I will, hopefully, be moving to Kitchener for university. Currently, I live in a small town, around 600 to 700 people, in southwestern Ontario, pretty much at the base of the Bruce Peninsula. Now, my family has been living in my current neighborhood since around 2002, so I'm pretty well acquainted with most people around here. My town isn't the worst place by any means, but there's quite a bit of meth users and dealers around, which is really pretty common in small farming towns like this, sad as it is. And if you were driving around here, you'd definitely see several empty houses that people use as drug dens, as well as burnt out trailers and vans that the people have used as rolling meth labs and since abandoned. We also have our fair share of sex offenders and child predators around, unfortunately. I have several stories about growing up here, but this one is about a scary-ass neighbor who tried to kidnap me when I was 14. It's important to note that this guy's an alcoholic and lost his license for injuring someone while drunk driving several years back. And so now he just drives a golf cart around. He's also unemployed and spends pretty much every day in his underwear and a disgusting stained house coat, driving around on his cart and drinking either red wine or vodka straight from the bottle. One night, I'm out walking back from my house where I'd been babysitting when I hear the golf cart come up behind me. I know it's my bum of a neighbor, so I don't turn around as I don't much feel like talking to him, especially alone when it's getting dark. I'm doing my best to ignore the fact that he's getting closer and closer to me, yelling at me and calling me darling and baby. He said, "Come on, sweetheart. Don't you want to take a ride on my golf cart? You can come back to my place." Keep in mind, he's got to be at least 60 and is around 6 feet tall and 250 pounds. And I'm a 14-year-old girl who would have a hard time tipping the scales at 110 pounds, soaking wet. Needless to say, I'm thoroughly grossed out and thinking, there is literally nobody on this earth who wants to ride on your fucking golf cart, you disgusting old pervert. But all I say is, piss off, Mr. Solomon. He's really close now. I can smell the alcohol on his breath as he continues to taunt me, making disgusting comments and saying that he wants to fuck me. It would almost be comical, being followed by some idiot on a golf cart, if it weren't for the horrifying sexual harassment type things he's saying, and for the fact he's now grabbing at me, trying to catch my arm and pull me towards him. He's definitely drunk out of his mind. We're on a road bordered on one side by forest and on the other side by a row of those small trailer houses that they bring in on trucks. The road swoops around the forest and ends in a muddy cul-de-sac where my house is. I'm pretty terrified at this point, and even though I've been taught my whole life never to go in the woods alone at night, I turn off the road and book it through the dense trees in the direction of my home. He doesn't follow me. He can't drive his golf cart through the trees, and he's way too messed up to chase me on foot. I'm damn near bawling when I see the little porch light on the back of our house. I get through the trees and see my older brother, Dominic, and two cousins, Laszlo and Tamas, sitting on the porch smoking. They're all pretty alarmed to see me so upset and ask me what's up. So I tell them Mr. Solomon was bothering me. Our family is Hungarian-Canadian, and not to stereotype, but we have some quick tempers. Also, my brother and cousins are all pretty big guys, all over 6 feet and pretty strong from working construction. Add to that the dark hair and half-beards, and they can look pretty intimidating. My brother pretty much loses his shit and hops in his truck along with Tamas. They go over to Mr. Solomon's house and bang on the door, yelling at him that if he comes near me again, he'll have them to deal with. Mr. Solomon hasn't bothered me again, and hopefully that's a trend that will continue. Please, be careful walking alone at night, even if you live somewhere rural like I do. During the mid to late 2000s, I worked in a camera store with a photo lab. We had our fair share of gross, creepy customers that fancied themselves as pro photogs. They shot terrible amateur porn with bad lighting, unattractive models, etc. Our male coworkers usually stepped up to help these customers because the pros would stare at us, say borderline inappropriate things, or try to get us to look at their terrible porn with them. We had one guy who didn't actually shoot porn, but was equally slimy. He attended porn conventions. Yeah, those are a thing. And would bring in a dozen or more rolls of film from these events. Every frame was him posing with the female porn stars. Terrible comparison, but think of a picture you'd take of your child at Disney with Mickey and Minnie. Then replace the characters with porn stars, and replace that child with a hunched over skinny guy that had a greasy bowl cut, beady eyes, wire-rimmed glasses, a long skinny nose, and virtually no chin. It wasn't just his appearance that was slimy, though. There was something just off about him. He was really timid and talked super quiet, so you'd have to lean over the counter and get close to hear him, and he always reeked too much cologne. The worst part about this guy, besides topping off my internal creep meter, was when he'd come in to pick up his pics. He would spread them out across the counter. There were no nudes, so we couldn't stop him, and whoever was ringing him out had to help him pick out the best ones. It was so uncomfortable. To give you an example, which photo makes us look like we are together? Emphasizing together and drawing out the word with a nasty, slimy way while holding up 2 photos for the poor employee to choose between. He would then order enlargements of the best ones in 8x10 or sometimes poster size. We used to joke that he lived in his mom's basement and used the enlargements as wallpaper. We had a good laugh at it, but I get shivers down my spine when I think about how that's probably exactly what he did. When I first started working there, we had a coworker named Jeff who dealt with the porn convention guy. I was actually warned on one of my very first days there not to help him and to let Jeff deal with him. I think there had been issues with previous female employees, but I'm not sure. Maybe Jeff just had good intuition. I remember the sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach when we'd see him coming and Jeff wasn't around to help him. We'd actually play the not it game when we saw him in the parking lot. But a few years after I started, Jeff quit. We were all sad because we loved working with him. Then the porn convention guy came in and we were all angry at Jeff for leaving us, and now one of us had to help him. My friend Denise was store manager and became his designated employee helper person. Things were fine for a while. Porn convention guy actually liked working with Denise and specifically requested her every time he came in. It weirded her and all the rest of us out, but we were all young and dumb and just went with it. One day, I was printing his pics and the last frame on the roll was a picture of Denise in the store. It almost looked like an accidental shot, like one that you'd take just to finish off the last frame on a disposable. Regardless, I didn't print it, cut the frame off as negatives and packaged it up. Technically, I could have been fired for that, but I didn't care. Denise approached me later, saying the porn convention guy was upset when he picked up his film. He said one of his pictures was missing. I found the negative in the trash, showed it to her, and I wasn't fired. It happened again the next time he came in, and every time after that. There was one picture of Denise at the end of one of the rolls of film, like he was saving that frame for when he arrived. We always cut the negative out and played dumb when he asked about the missing photo. Eventually, someone sold him a digital camera, and we printed his pictures from a memory card. We couldn't just cut off the negative anymore. Instead, we edited the picture of Denise to look like crap. Too dark, washed out, bright pink, whatever we felt like that day. He never said anything, but he always seemed disappointed when he was flipping through his pictures and got to that last one. This went on until Denise was promoted to assistant district manager, maybe 2 years after Jeff left, and she had to travel between all the stores in the state. I became the manager of our store and had to help this creep. Karma sucks. Thankfully, I wasn't his type. Probably because I was a giant bitch at him and no images of me or any other employee showed up on his memory cards. One day, Denise is at our store for training and we see porn convention guy in the parking lot. Denise runs to the back room and hid, and I went to help him like normal, gearing up my bitch mode. First words out of his mouth, "Where is Denise?" I reminded him for the umpteenth time she no longer worked here. But her car is here. I'm speechless and just stare at him, jaw on the floor for what felt like 10 minutes while trying to think of something to say. Finally, words came out. I'm not sure what she drives, but she's not here. She drives that blue Cavalier right there, and points at Denise's car. I'm seriously creeped out, grossed out, and completely dumbstruck. All I could say was, "No, it's not," like a stubborn toddler, and walked away. The guy didn't leave. He lingered at the front of the store for a half hour, pretending to look at picture frames. Denise hid in the back room until he left without buying a frame or saying a word. We called her boss, the district manager, and explained everything. He told Denise not to go back to our store, that he'd handle our training from then on, but unfortunately, the porn convention guy hadn't done anything illegal, and nothing he did would warrant us refusing his business, so we had to keep helping him as he came in. Next time he came in, there was a photo of her car on his memory card, which I deleted. Again, something I could get fired for. But who was he going to tell? Denise was practically my boss. Occurred the recession, and our business was hit bad. Our district went from having 25 stores to 3. Most of the managers kept their jobs and moved to one of the 3 remaining stores. Denise became our sales manager. I worked in the photo lab. Our store manager was a giant douche. We had a sales guy named Nick that was a big guy and a total hard ass. The first time we realized porn convention guy was bringing his pics to our store, Denise wasn't there. I went to print an order and saw his slimy face on my computer screen and just felt sick to my stomach. I told the manager and everyone about the guy and his fascination with Denise. Nick said he'd help porn convention guy from now on, so no one else would have to deal with it. Denise still drove the blue Cavalier, and the same thing started happening. We'd see him coming, she'd hide in the back. Where's Denise? Not here. Her car is here. Not her car. Then he'd linger in the store hoping to catch a glimpse of her, sometimes for over an hour, and leave without saying anything or buying anything. We called the cops once, but they said they couldn't do anything. The district manager still wouldn't allow us to refuse him service. We just continued to do what we could. Denise never worked alone, and we always made sure she was safe in her car at night before anyone drove away, something we did for everyone anyways. It all came to head about 6 months after most of the stores closed. Porn convention guy was in the store lingering. Denise is hiding, and he just strolls on through the door to the photo lab, into the back room where Denise is sitting. Nick and I followed and stood in the doorway, shocked, as he stood there staring at her with beady little eyes, smiling his creepy closed lip smile. No one said anything for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the store manager pushes through me and Nick in the doorway and tells porn convention guy he can't be here. Porn convention guy says nothing, shuffled his feet a bit, but keeps staring at Denise. I could feel how horrified she was from across the room. The useless manager then says, "Sir, you have to leave. We have photo processing chemicals back here. It's against OSHA policy for you to be here." So this stupidest statement ever, by the way, totally true. Technically, that's why he shouldn't have been back here, but "get the fuck out, you fucking creep," was way more appropriate at the time. Anyways, the manager is essentially useless in this situation. Denise is almost in tears. I'm in shock, and Nick, well, he looked pissed. It happened pretty quickly, but I swear Nick jumped over a 6-foot table and got in porn convention guy's face, or more like towered over the cowardly little man. Calmly, quietly, but filled with rage and anger, Nick says, "Get the fuck out, and don't come back." Porn convention guy was practically pissing himself. He backed up toward the sales floor and walked backwards all the way out the door, visibly shaking the entire time. Nick stayed within inches of him until he was outside. We called the cops again. They can't do anything. We called the district manager. Nick got a slap on the wrist for chasing off a paying customer, followed by a "good job." Denise went home for the day. We, of course, walked her to her car. and porn convention guy never came back to pick up his creepy enlargements. I like to think that every time he stares up at the gap in his porn convention wallpaper, he remembers Nick towering over him, ready to smash his greasy bowl-cut covered head into the table. So, after years of accommodating a creepy customer that almost but not quite stalked a coworker, we learned that all we needed was a big, angry male coworker to scare the shit out of him. I've browsed through for quite a while now, and finally decided I'd add my own experience on here. I'll apologize now for the length of the story. This was about 4 years ago, when I was pregnant with my third daughter. My husband, kids, and I had just moved to a big city. I've always been a quiet, stick-to-myself homebody, and moving to such a huge place really stressed me out. It took me months before I'd finally venture out on my own because I was terrified of driving in such a foreign place. Plus, I was also scared of the area we had moved into. 3 murders happened the same day we moved there. So I worried about carjackings and shootings and rapes and every other thing that comes with a big city. I rarely went out of the house and made my husband believe that I had developed OCD from how many times I checked the door and window locks. Yeah, I was pretty on edge. Fast forward a few months, and we moved to a new neighborhood. Not the best, but certainly a few steps up from where we had been. I slowly started getting out of the house more and more, and would even stay out when it was getting dark. I resumed my daily life without worrying about getting carjacked or shot in broad daylight, and eventually found a job at a funeral home. Now, working at the funeral home was great, with only the occasional nope moments mixed in here or there. But the hours were long and inconsistent. Some nights I would get home at 5 p.m. Other nights I wouldn't get home until 2 a.m. It was one of those nights I had worked late, close to 1:30 a.m., when I got a text from my husband telling me to pick up milk on the way home from work. I stopped at the closest Walmart and went in for milk. However, being a chick, I decided that I needed about 50 other items and went about my shopping. While strolling down the dairy aisle, I accidentally bumped into a man. He seemed like any other person, but his appearance kind of unnerved me. He was tall, with long, dirty hair and covered in dirt and grime. His clothes were threadbare, and his pants barely stayed up on his thin frame. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't used to seeing homeless people, but I assumed that's what he was. I apologized and went about my way. Several aisles later, I passed by him again, and he smiles at me, but in a creepy sort of way. Whatever, shrugged it off, kept shopping. About 10 minutes passed, and I was walking down the feminine hygiene aisle. I stopped to grab some things, and when I turn around, it's the same guy, and he's standing about 4 feet away from me. He doesn't look at me directly, but I can feel him staring out of the corner of his eye. That was my cue to get the fuck out, and so I turned my cart and practically ran to the checkouts. As I'm unloading my shopping cart, he comes to the same register. He starts unloading his cart and keeps throwing little things over the little divider that I had put behind my stuff. I move his things back, and he puts his hand on mine and asks me to stop. This pissed me off, so I asked him what the deal was. "Can you pay for some of my stuff?" I realized that he had been watching me shopping, and since I was dressed nicely, probably assumed that I had money. I politely tell him no, and wait for the cashier to ring up my items. 2 more people come up to the same register, and he begins asking them if they'll pay for stuff as well. The nice girl in front of me already said she'll pay for half of it, he tells them. She said she'd help me. At this point, I'm already paying for my stuff, so I turn to him and tell him firmly, "I said no." He and the other customers glare at me, and then begins cursing and yelling at me. This fucking bitch lied to me. She lied to me. She said she'd help me. I tell him to fuck off, that I'm too tired to deal with his shit, and he should get a job to pay for his own stuff. which happened to be condoms, paper towels, cleaners, etc. By the way, I might have said yes if it were food. I turn to leave, and he grabs my arm. "You're not going anywhere until you pay for this. I'll call the cops on you." I slap his hand off of me, tell him to go fuck himself, and storm off toward the exit. I quickly get out to my car, throw my stuff in the backseat, and shove the car in the opposite direction. I jump in and start the car. I was backing up when I noticed a beaten-up Camaro with its lights on behind me. Fuck it. I haul ass out of the parking lot. So does the Camaro. I start driving toward home, but I had a gut feeling that I should take a different route. Now, I wasn't sure that this car was actually following me. After all, it's a big city, and there are usually lots of cars going the same route as you. But as I kept checking my rearview mirror, I had a bad feeling every time I saw that car. My suspicions were confirmed when I drove through my work cemetery, and so did they. I called my husband and told him, "I think someone's following me." He advised me to get home ASAP and that he'd call the cops. I sped toward the house, making unnecessary turns, all with this creep right behind me. I can now hear him screaming at me, and he begins hanging out the window, waving his arms and telling me to pull over. He sped up parallel with me and tried to cut me off, but I slammed on the brakes and moved around him. He continues trying to get beside me, screaming and yelling obscenities, and starts throwing stuff at my car. At this point, I'm sobbing, nervous wreck, scared to death that I'm going to get into an accident and this creep is going to do God knows what to me. I'm almost home now, coming close to my turn when I realize something that makes my stomach drop. I live in a gated community. Now, this might not sound so bad, except for the fact you have to wait for the gate to open. I have to sit there for up to 30 seconds and wait for an automatic gate to open wide enough for me to drive through, and it will continue to stay open for a couple of minutes. I called my husband again and began screaming for him to get out here now. I turned into the entrance and the gate is already open. I speed through, worried that it will start closing before I can get to it. And luckily for me, it doesn't. However, creepy guy's still on my ass. I don't really know what to do. So I lay down the horn, pray that my husband is on his way to the gate, and park the car. The guy slows down, turns his headlights off, parks about 20 feet behind me. I hear his car door open. In the dark, I can see him sauntering toward my car, holding something in his hand that looks like maybe a crowbar or pipe of some sort. One of our neighbor's patio lights comes on, and I see my husband walking toward us, in nothing but his combat boots and tidy whities, holding his shotgun. He shoots in the guy's direction, screams for him to get the fuck out of here, and shoots again. I see the guy run to his car, and he quickly reverses it, hits one of our neighbor's cars, and hauls balls out of there. Never saw him again. But for the next 6 months, I'd occasionally see a beat-up Camaro hanging out at the end of the street. We've since moved, and my knight in tidy whities brought me a Ruger 9mm to keep in the car, just in case. Creepy homeless guy, let's never meet again. Hey guys, I'm Bella Deadwood. Thank you for watching my video. I'm really new to this whole storytelling community, and to be honest, I have a lot to learn. So any suggestions for future videos or ways that I can make my storytelling better would be greatly appreciated. I look forward to seeing your comments, and for now, I'll leave you with your nightmares. Bye guys.